Hello and welcome to the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast, where we are now in our third season of helping everyday runners fuel better, run smarter, and recover faster so you can reach your full performance potential. I'm your host, Stephanie Natchuk, dietitian, running coach, twin mom, and fellow runner too. As the owner of Stephanie Natchuk Performance Nutrition, I've spent over a decade helping runners learn to fuel their bodies better, unlock their best running performances, and establish healthier relationships with food and exercise. This podcast is all about helping you become the very best runner you can be by teaching you the running-specific nutrition, training, and recovery strategies that you need to reach all your wildest health, fitness, and running goals. If you're ready to reconnect with your love of running, join me each week as I share my best advice, interview guest experts, and talk to everyday runners who are conquering their goals by tapping into the power of performance nutrition, with a side of some myth busting too. And if you're looking for even more tips, resources, and strategies for runners, you can find me on Instagram at Steph the Runner's Dietitian or by visiting www.stephanienatchuk.com. All right, let's dive into today's episode. Start today's episode, I just want to really quickly invite you to download my free fueling guide and strength training guides for runners. Currently available as a handy little bundle for you all in one at the link in the show notes. So just to give you more information, in this free fueling guide, you're going to find my top fueling tips for runners. As well, in there, I've put together some meal ideas and even a couple of recipes for your pre and post run fuel. We've also got some suggestions for what to fuel with during your run to make sure that you just have the best overall performance possible. If you've really been struggling to understand what to eat, when, where to start when it comes to supporting your running with better nutrition, this guide is here to help you kickstart your running journey. The other guide that I mentioned is my strength training guide for runners. We know that runners are notoriously bad at consistently getting their strength training in. So this guide includes both a PDF resource, it's got some tips, some guidelines, as well as a link to my series on YouTube where I walk you through all the exercises in this program, giving you some suggestions on proper form, how to modify if needed, how to progress things if needed. This is a really great beginner's guide to strength training for runners who want an effective but efficient full body workout that is going to support the key muscles and movements you need to run stronger and help stay injury free. So once again, both of these guides are available as a handy little bundle. So you just click on the link in the show notes, enter your email address once, and both of the free guides are going to get sent to your inbox right away. I really hope that you find these guides helpful and that they support you and your running goals in the most effective way possible. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode. All right. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast, where we are breaking down 5 hard truths that runners need to hear. So today's episode is coming from just some of the really common reasons why runners get stuck and stay stuck when it comes to making the progress with their training that they feel they should be. And this might be within a training cycle. You're just not really seeing performance gains or seeing those breakthroughs that you think you should be with your training. Or over time, it might be the case of a runner who has been running for a few years or even a few decades. And you're just over that time, you're not really seeing the improvements that you think you should be. So today we're breaking it down into some of those reasons why, and some of these might be maybe hard truths to hear, things that, maybe you're going to feel a little bit called out. But trust me, this is coming from a place of tough love. Love, yes, tough love. But as a coach who, over my years of working with hundreds of athletes, I can just see some really clear commonalities and some really clear reasons why you might be stuck and why you might be struggling. So we're going to break those down today. So all of these hopefully won't resonate with you. I mean, maybe there'll be some of you listening that you're like, checking off all 5 of these.
but there might be just one or two things that you're like, oh, okay, yeah, like that makes sense. Or, this one sounds like me, that sort of idea. So I hope that you're able to take something away from the episode today and really, kind of start to reflect on what are the running goals that I've been setting for myself? How have I been doing with meeting them? And if I haven't really been successful, if I'm not really seeing the gains or the performance improvements that I want to, what are some reasons why that might be? And so, hard truth number one is that you just are not running enough to reach your goals. So I'm just going to let that settle for a second. You are just not running enough to reach your goals. And what I mean by that is I see a ton of runners who have a very kind of love-hate relationship with running. And basically what happens is you love to sign up for races, you love to participate in events, you love to, take on challenges of bigger, longer, whatever it might be. You love to do these things. But at the same time, you find that in between races, you really struggle with running consistency. Maybe it's because by the end of each training cycle, you're just like so done with running. You're super burnt out from all the running that you have to do to prepare for some of these events. Or it's I need a race on the calendar in order to be motivated to run. And so then after, years of always having something on the calendar, always ready, getting ready for back to back to back to back events, it just can sort of take its toll after a while, right? And so then we want a break from racing. We want to not have anything on the calendar, but then we tend to not run at all when that's happening. And so this creates a really sort of challenging thing, a really sort of challenging situation where we need to just get to a point where we're running more consistently over time, building on that volume, specifically building that aerobic base, right? Because this is where it takes the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of the easy running, right? The slow running, the very unexciting, unsexy running in order to build that aerobic base that we can then layer the speed work on top of to see progressively faster race times. But if anytime we're not actively training for a race, in which case we are trying to do more race specific workouts on top of a base that might not be there, we're trying to do more race specific workouts, then we don't have as much time to dedicate to just that easy base building. And now we can see how, even though we're doing a ton of training and we're doing a ton of racing, we might not actually be making the progress long term that we want to be with our running. And so what I really would love to see is, rather than it being sort of an all or nothing thing, is to find a little bit more of a balance between race season, off season or base building season, and maybe the other activities that we like to do. And I think a lot of runners kind of underestimate like how much running it really takes term in order for us to build up to that volume that will allow us to continue to improve. So if this is you, and if you've been kind of feeling stuck with your running, and if you look back at your, sort of training logs, we all have access to our Garmin or whatever it is, Apple Watch, that you might be using to track your running over time. If we look back at that data and you kind of see like week by week, month by month, how much running are you actually getting in? And there's huge ebbs and flows throughout the year. And you find that you feel like you're starting from scratch every single time you enter a race. So your solution to this is to always be getting ready for a race. Fortunately, that is not the most sustainable plan long term. So instead, what we want to do is just, start small, ease off a little bit, but just focus on building a consistent running habit. And I don't mean focusing on building a consistent running habit that has you running 5 or 6 days a week for a minimum of an hour at a time, the way that you might when you're doing something like getting ready for a marathon. I mean more like running 3 or 4 days per week, 20 to 40 minutes for most of those runs. And then maybe you have one slightly longer run each week or even every other week that you're going to build up to being about 90 minutes. And this is the amount of running that would be your new base mileage each week. And if you can hold on to that consistently for a longer period of time, it goes such an unbelievably long way to setting you up to then be able to start your next training plan at a higher volume. So you're not starting from zero every single time, starting from scratch every single time, but instead you're building on what you've been doing. Now, the next season, the next off season, the next base building season, you may run a little bit more than that. Maybe if you started out running 3 days a week, you're going to run 4 days a week as your new base mileage. Maybe instead of running 20 minutes, you're going to run 30 minutes, whatever. But you're just slowly increasing on that base mileage. And this doesn't need to be at the expense of all of your other activities that you do, especially things like strength training. But what it does mean is that you probably are going to, in order to, again, build on becoming a better runner, improve your race day performances, get faster at running things like, whether it's a 10K, half marathon, marathon, whatever it might be, you are probably going to need to be training 6 days a week. And some of those days are going to be both running or cross training and strength training days. If you're looking to level up on that performance, are there people who can probably do this with a little bit less? Absolutely. Are there people who need to do it with less for, injury reasons, really, legitimate time constraint reasons, that sort of thing? Absolutely. But if this is a matter of, I just don't necessarily have the drive or motivation to run when I'm not actively training for a race, then we really want to change that and focus on building that consistent running habit, because you'll be amazed in your next training cycle how much better it is, how much easier it is when you're starting off already, 2, 3, 4 steps ahead. So that's number one. Hard truth number one is that you are just not running enough to reach your running goals. You just simply need to be doing more running. Now, hard truth number two is that you're doing your easy runs too fast. So when I say you need to be doing more running, I want to be very specific that you probably need to be doing more volume, more weekly miles, more time on your feet in your easy effort zone, right? In that slow effort zone. This does not mean that you need to go out and do more hard workouts. Doesn't mean that you need to go out and do more fast miles, running as fast as you can for those 20, 30, 40 minutes. I mean, getting out there and spending the time doing the very unsexy, very unexciting training. Because you've probably heard that you need to run slow in order to run fast. And this often is sort of talked about in a macro sense of, a big, over the course of a training cycle, doing more easy, slower miles allows you to run faster on race day. And yes, it does. But what it also means is that when you run slower on your easy days and intentionally keep yourself in that easy conversational pace zone, then you are going to have more capacity and more gas in the tank to run faster for your weekly quality sessions or for your weekly workouts. So when your schedule calls for you to run faster than your easy effort or even, your maybe marathon pace effort, you can do it, right? And you're not going to struggle through it the way you would is if you were running all of your easy runs at a similar pace to that, right? If you're spending too much time in those faster effort zones, then when you need to run faster, you just don't have the capacity to do it. I had a runner once that I worked with, this is a few years ago, and she was really frustrated because she could never run more than 2 miles at a time. She could not run more than 2 miles without stopping. And so kind of uncovering and sort of digging into what was going on here, what we found was that she was in her mind, she felt as though she only had 2 miles worth of time to run. So whatever that was going to be, let's just say 10-minute mile, 20 minutes of running. She felt as though she could only run for 20 minutes. And so what she was doing was she was trying to run faster and faster and faster for those 20 minutes to try and cover as much ground as possible before she hit that wall. And it was so interesting to hear, kind of how she thought that this worked and sort of what she was trying to accomplish with just running faster and harder to try and get more miles under her feet before she inevitably hit this wall at 20 minutes. Instead, to say, oh, no, actually, you will be amazed, especially if you're doing all that hard training, you'll be amazed at how long you can run for when you stick to that easy conversational zone. And so for a lot of people, this is an incredibly ego destroying thing to take on, right? Especially if you're used to and you've been running for a long time, a little bit too fast. When you're told, hey, you need to slow it down, take it down to that conversational pace, people will say, well, Steph, like I'm basically walking at that point. Yes, you are. And that is okay, right? Because the purpose here is not to destroy your soul or anything like that. It's to develop that aerobic fitness and that aerobic base that we are then building the fitness, the aerobic capacity or the anaerobic capacity and the rest of your speed on top of. But if you have a crappy aerobic base, you are always going to struggle with improving your time for those longer distances. And new runners can really struggle with this because we need to really learn and develop these different gears, these different speeds that we have, right? When we first start running, we have one speed, right? We only know how to run or not run, right? We're either running or walking. It takes time, it takes practice, it takes thoughtfulness to learn how to develop all of these different speeds, right? Everything from our easy conversational pace to kind of our marathon pace, up to working to our lactate threshold pace, up to working at our VO2 max effort, like all of these different gears that we have. It just takes time to really get good at knowing what all those are and where we're at with the efforts versus the paces. So if you're new to this, don't worry, you've got time to figure it out. This is what the beauty of these types of resources like this podcast and coaching and everything really gives you, is really an understanding of how to work on these things and how to get better so you don't struggle for, decades or quit running because you just can't seem to do it. So a little bit of knowledge goes a really long way. But slowing down on those easy runs is what helps you unlock that speed potential for your workouts that will be the thing that also helps you get faster and race faster. All right, hard truth number 3 is that you are eating all of your calories at the wrong times of day. So this is, most of the runners that I see when I start working with someone new is under fueling before and after their workouts, before and after their runs. And then at other times of day, usually later in the day, eating the entire kitchen because we're so hungry that we just cannot seem to get full or get satisfied. And of course, when that happens, it can be really difficult to be choosing and eating, I'll say, quote unquote, the right things, right? The things that are going to keep us full, keep us satisfied, fuel our bodies properly, and give us the micronutrients that we need to perform and feel our best. When we are so hungry, you've probably been in the situation before. We all have been, where we are so hungry that quite literally the first thing that we see, the quickest, easiest thing that we can grab out of the cupboard or out of the fridge is what we are having. And we're going to eat a gigantic portion of it. Doesn't matter what it is. We are going to eat massive amounts of whatever is quick, easy, and tasty. Because when our brain is so starved for nutrients and calories and we are so hungry, we need whatever is going to give us the most energy the fastest. And these tend to be things that are higher in added sugars, refined carbohydrates, and high in fat, because those things are tasty and they are quick sources of energy for the brain, right? Or very calorie dense foods, right? Things that are going to give us a lot of energy, a lot of bang for our buck. So this is not just a willpower thing. Like this is not a choice thing that we're necessarily making in that moment. It's that when our brain needs energy and needs fuel that badly, the part of our brain that is responsible for like good logical decision making that, goes in there and like grabs the carrots and hummus is not the same part of our brain that is reaching for the chocolate or the half a block of cheese or, whatever else it might be that is just, quick, easy, grab and go. Those are two different parts of the brain. And so when we are fueling ourselves properly and we are making sure that we're having a really good pre and post workout meal, we are then less susceptible to experiencing that ravenous hunger that can come on that leads us to making those food choices that ultimately are not going to improve or enhance our performance or recovery. And so we want to be avoiding doing a lot of fasted training and doing a lot of fasted runs, especially long runs or hard workouts. We really, really, really don't want to be doing those fasted. And then we also want to make sure that we're very intentional about having that post workout meal so that we can get in some protein, we can get in some carbs, and we can start those recovery and refueling processes rather than delaying it. Now we have delayed recovery, we have delayed glycogen replenishment, which leaves us with less fuel for the workout the next day. And then we're more susceptible to overeating on the foods that are not going to ultimately benefit us. And, then of course, if we, later in the evening, before going to bed, we are eating a lot, large portions of some of these really calorie dense, types of foods, then of course we're not going to wake up hungry the next day, right? We can have it negatively impact our sleep. We could be experiencing some gut issues, some gut symptoms as a result. And it's going to be really hard for us to get in that pre-workout breakfast or pre-run fuel the next day because we're still kind of full from the night before. If we shift our calories to be more concentrated around when we need them, and if we're more intentional about getting those calories in around our workouts, we can set our whole day up for more success with a better nutrition strategy because we aren't falling kind of susceptible to our appetite just completely taking over and completely taking control. And so that brings us to hard truth number 4 is that you're just not lifting heavy enough when you do your strength training. So this one is for the people who are doing consistent training, strength training, not those of you who skip it more often than you do it and definitely have not gotten in a second or third session in a single week in you don't even remember when. For those of you who are in that camp, I just want you lifting consistently. That is number 1. That is the most important thing. But if you have been lifting consistently for a little while, and you aren't really seeing further progress, you aren't really getting more results, maybe you're backsliding a little bit with some of injury stuff or performance stuff that initially strength training did help or fix, but now you're I'm not still seeing those ongoing results. It is probably because you are actually not lifting heavy enough with your strength training. If you have, in your home gym or you go to the gym, and you've got 5-pound dumbbells, 10-pound dumbbells, 20-pound dumbbells, and you do everything with those same 3 weights. You're doing the same weight for your upper body exercises as your lower body exercises. And you're really maxing out it at 20 pounds after maybe a few months or years of consistent strength training. I am here to tell you that you are probably not lifting heavy enough. Now, of course, if you need to be mindful of the weight that you lift, you're rehabbing an injury, you have an area that is maybe a chronic issue, you're working with a physiotherapist or an athletic therapist, and you've been specifically told to not lift particularly heavy in a certain area, I want you to follow that advice. Please do not, throw all that personalized advice that has been tailored to you and your situation out the window just from listening to this podcast. But if you're not in that situation, and instead this is a matter of you just maybe haven't had that push or that awareness of the importance of increasing your weight or increasing, progressing your workouts, your strength workouts in some other way, then this is your sign from the universe that this is something that's really, really important for you to continue to make progress with your workouts and with the results that you're going to get from your training. The other thing is that if you are still mostly doing body weight exercises, then definitely we want to be focusing on doing more resistance training and adding in more than just body weight to our exercise program. At first, body weight exercises are going to be challenging. But after doing those consistently for, anywhere from 4 up to 8 weeks, then just our body weight is no longer going to be enough to continue to challenge us, to continue to force our muscles to get stronger and continue to stimulate the body to build more muscle mass. And so then it's a matter of, okay, we just need to add either a few more reps to each set that we're doing, or maybe we are adding a little bit of weight and progressively overloading our muscles to continue to encourage them to get stronger. Now, if you're listening to this and you're like, but Steph, like every time I lift heavier, I am so sore afterwards that like I can't run, I can't do anything for days after I do my strength workouts. Well, then I'm here to tell you that you are probably overshooting and in fact lifting far too heavy from where you started, right? Like if you're doing a specific exercise, let's say you're doing a squat and typically you hold a 10-pound dumbbell when you do that squat. And you listen to this episode and you're like, oh yeah, Steph, you're right. I probably should lift heavier. And you turn around in the next workout that you do, you go and you grab a 30-pound dumbbell for that work. That's a huge jump, right? That's a lot. And, if you're doing pretty good at 10, tripling that weight that you were using for that specific exercise is going to be a lot. And so what I would suggest is a more gradual progression, a slower progression up to that 30-pound weight, like over a period of probably several weeks. Then you are going to be much less sore because it's less of a huge change from doing like this really big dramatic shift with what you're doing all in one shot. The same way you don't go and run 1 mile and then you're like, oh, well, that was pretty easy. And I'm going to run 10, right? That is not what we recommend doing. That's too much of a jump. It's too much too quickly. So of course you're going to run into trouble when you have that approach with your strength training as well. And we want to just be always thinking about what's my gradual build, what's my gradual progression, the same way we're gradually progressing those workouts, about 10% every week and just, or not every single week, but 10% at a time and just gradually. We want to be doing the same thing with our strength training and just not stay stuck with doing the same workout with the same exercises, same reps, same everything for like months to years on end, right? There's got to be a shake up. There's got to be a change up. And sometimes it can really be as simple as just adding a bit more weight to the exercises that we're already doing. And finally, our last one for today, hard truth number 5, is that you are not taking your recovery seriously enough to get the best results from the training that you're doing. And this comes down to 3 fundamental factors of recovery that are most overlooked or most ignored. And that is getting enough sleep, minimum 7 hours of sleep per night. Drinking too much alcohol. Alcohol can really seriously damage our recovery and really interfere with our ability to recover, as well as not properly refueling our bodies and recovering after our workouts. So we talked already with hard truth number 3 about needing to eat at the right times and the refueling process being so important to kickstart those recovery processes, help better regulate appetite, and make sure that we are getting that glycogen replenishment as quickly as possible, especially again when you're in those higher training volume seasons. But to kind of add to that, we also want to give ourselves the time and the space in between those workouts in order to recover fully. And that can only happen when we aren't doing too much training, especially if it means that we are lacking sleep as a result. And so if you're not paying attention to some of these foundations and basics of recovery, sleep, nutrition, and limiting alcohol, all the other recovery modalities like your stretching, your foam rolling, etc., all that other stuff is not going to save you if you aren't nailing those basics. Like, can it help? Yeah, for sure. And can it maybe, allow you a little bit more wiggle room to like not do everything else perfectly before you do wind up injured? Like, yeah. But at the same time, if your sleep is crappy, if your nutrition is crappy, if you're drinking too much alcohol, then I don't care how much stretching and foam rolling you're doing, you are probably going to get into trouble at some point. And just overall, you're going to have a limit or a cap on your performance capacity or on your capabilities, on your potential as a runner, how many miles you can run without getting injured or hitting a wall, how much training you can take on before you start to really get worn out and start to pick up more illnesses and stuff like that along the way. So if we are nailing our recovery in a number of different ways and really respecting recovery as a core component of becoming a better athlete, then it allows us to build on all of those other things on top of it, right? We can do more miles. We can lift heavier. We can eat and fuel the way that we need to. It all comes together when we're really respecting and understanding the importance of those good recovery practices. Because at the end of the day, more training isn't always better. And if you are currently a very high volume runner, if you're doing a lot of training, but you just don't feel like you're seeing the results of that or kind of the improvements because of that, then, that sometimes is a sign that we really need to look at those recovery practices, what's going on with your recovery, and see, like, are you effective and getting what you need out of the downtime between your workouts? It's not always a matter of just loading on more training to get the result. It's what we do in between our training sessions that really makes the difference. So we need to balance those work days with the rest and recovery days, and of course, be really mindful of those other pieces that can have a huge influence on our ability to recover and get the quality sleep that we need. All right, so that is our 5 hard truths for runners. I hope that some of these resonated with you. I hope that you can, take some good lessons, some good things from this episode to incorporate into your training going forward and really, just allow you to see where some of those blind spots are in your training or in your nutrition or recovery strategies. And we can try and fill those gaps so that you can continue to really reach your full potential as a runner. If you need help with any aspects of this, then of course I would love to help you. I offer both one-on-one coaching to runners, both nutrition and run coaching, as well as I have a fantastic online program for runners called the Fuel Train Recover Club. And inside the Fuel Train Recover Club, you get unlimited access to all of our resources. We have training plans that are fully customizable. You get access to coaching from me when you need it. We can email, we can meet on Zoom, whatever it is, as well as we have a wonderful community space for like-minded runners to get together and share. So that is it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you back here for next week's episode. Bye for now.
The information on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used or relied upon for the diagnosis or treatment of any health condition. This information does not create a client-practitioner relationship and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice.